Hey there, sleepyheads. Welcome back to the channel. Before we drift into tonight's tale of ancient magic artifacts of Ooo, I'd love to know where in the world are you watching from tonight? And what time is it for you right now? Drop it in the comments below. It's always magical seeing how far and wide this sleepy little community reaches. All right, lights low, blankets up. Let's begin. Our first stop in this catalog of mystical treasures is perhaps the most important book in all of Ooo. A simple-looking tome at first glance, bound in deep purple with a golden star shining on the cover. The Enchiridion, a word that itself means handbook or guide, and yet within the world of Adventure Time, it is far more than just a collection of written words. The Enchiridion is a test, a promise, a doorway, and in many ways a character of its own. When we first see the Enchiridion, it is presented as a book for heroes, not for ordinary people, not for those who stumble upon it by accident, but for individuals who embody bravery, selflessness, and wisdom. The Enchiridion doesn't simply rest on a shelf waiting to be borrowed, it must be earned. Finn the human, the boy whose very life is shaped around the ideal of heroism, is tasked with proving himself worthy of this ancient book. His quest is full of strange trials like rescuing princesses, showing kindness to tiny creatures, and facing monsters with both strength and compassion. Each step is a reminder that the Enchiridion is less about physical might and more about the heart that drives a hero forward. But where did this mysterious book come from? The show never gives us a straightforward origin, and that is part of its charm. The Enchiridion feels as though it has always been there, older than kingdoms, older perhaps even than Ooo itself. Some fans speculate it was created by cosmic beings like the cosmic owl, or even Prismo, meant to guide heroes through the tangled web of destiny. Others believe it could be a remnant from the world before the Great Mushroom War, crafted by sages who mixed magic and science into one. Whatever its true beginnings, the Enchiridion radiates the sense of an artifact that bridges the mortal and the divine. Think about the way the book functions. It is not merely a manual with pages to flip through. The Enchiridion has power woven into it. Later in the story, it becomes a key to the multiverse itself, able to open portals and summon cosmic forces. It holds maps, secrets, and warnings about the delicate balance of existence. In many ways, it is less a book and more a living archive of heroism. You might imagine that the Enchiridion is constantly watching, recording, and updating, making sure that only those who truly embody courage can unlock its mysteries. This reminds us of mythologies across our own world. Ancient texts often claim to hold divine truth, whether they were sacred scriptures, magical grimoires, or books of forbidden knowledge. To hold one was not just to read stories, but to touch something larger than life. The Enchiridion seems to borrow from this tradition. It is both practical, teaching a hero what to do, and mystical, offering wisdom that transcends time. When Finn finally receives it, it feels as though he is stepping into a long lineage of chosen ones, each passing the torch of responsibility to the next. There is also something so quietly poetic about the fact that this artifact is a book. Unlike a sword or a crown, it does not immediately suggest violence or rulership. It suggests learning, reflection, and choice. A sword may strike down an enemy, but a book teaches you how to decide when that sword should be used. A crown may place you above others, but a book humbles you, showing that knowledge is endless. The Enchiridion places the ideal of wisdom above the thrill of power, and that is why it feels like such a precious relic in the Land of Ooo. When we look closer, the trials Finn goes through to earn it echo the structure of old hero myths. In folklore, heroes often go on a journey, facing monsters, solving riddles, and resisting temptations. These trials are never about the treasure itself, but about what the hero becomes along the way. The Enchiridion carries that tradition forward. The real reward is not the book, but the growth Finn experiences in proving himself worthy. That is what makes it so fitting that this ancient artifact chose him, a boy with a pure heart and boundless determination. And yet, the Enchiridion is not only a blessing. Like many powerful artifacts and stories, it can also bring danger. Later, it becomes a tool for those with darker ambitions like the Lich, who sees in it a way to access power beyond imagining. In that sense, the Enchiridion is neutral. It reflects the user. In the hands of a hero, it can guide and protect. In the hands of a villain, it can shatter worlds. This dual nature is what gives it depth, reminding us that artifacts are only as noble or destructive as those who wield them. The neutrality of the Enchiridion makes it especially fascinating because it mirrors the moral complexity of Ooo itself. The Land of Ooo is not black and white. It is a place where good people can make mistakes, where villains can hold fragments of kindness, and where magic itself does not choose sides. The book in this way is like a mirror. When Finn holds it, we see a reflection of hope, perseverance, and innocence. When the Lich seeks it, we see ambition, cruelty, and endless hunger. The Enchiridion becomes a stage upon which the deepest qualities of the soul are revealed. And if we think about it, isn't that what real books do as well? A story in your hands is never just words on a page. How you read it, what you take from it, how you act upon its lessons, those are all reflections of who you are. One person may read a heroic saga and find courage. Another might read the same tale and see a path to domination. The Enchiridion magnifies this truth. It asks not only what is inside its pages, but what is inside its reader. One of the most memorable uses of the Enchiridion comes much later, when it becomes a key to the multiverse itself. The pages unfold into a literal portal, connecting the ordinary with the cosmic. It is striking that such an unassuming object could unlock something so grand. That quiet purple book, held in Finn's small hands, has the ability to reach into realms beyond comprehension. It is a reminder of the theme that runs through Adventure Time. The greatness does not always look like a towering castle or a mighty weapon. Sometimes it looks like something small, something you could tuck under your arm, something that waits patiently until the right hands come along. We can also think of the Enchiridion as a map, not just of space, but of spirit. Inside it are lessons about what makes a true hero, and those lessons are not just rules to follow, but guidance for the heart. When Finn reads it, he is stepping into an ancient tradition, one that stretches back to heroes long forgotten. We never see all of those who came before him, but their presence is felt in the very pages of the book. It is almost as though the Enchiridion remembers them, carrying the echo of their choices, their victories, and even their failures. That sense of lineage connects the Enchiridion to many mythological objects in our world. Think of the Arthurian legends, where only the worthy could pull the sword Excalibur from the stone. Think of ancient Greek heroes who were given shields or weapons by the gods, not just to win battles, but to prove their honor. The Enchiridion takes its place in that tradition. It is not just a prop in Finn's story, but a test that he must live up to, echoing the timeless idea that true heroism is measured not by strength alone, but by character. There is also a quiet mystery to the way the Enchiridion is guarded. When Finn first seeks it, he faces a strange old man who tests him with riddles and challenges. These guardians, like the book itself, seem to exist outside the normal flow of time. They are not quite villains, not quite allies, but figures who ensure that the one who reaches the Enchiridion is ready. This is a very old motif in myths and fairy tales. Heroes often encounter gatekeepers who test their worth, whether they are sphinxes with riddles, enchanted animals, or wise sages. The Enchiridion's guardians add another layer of depth, suggesting that the book is too precious to be left unprotected, yet too important to be hidden away forever. We can imagine that the Enchiridion's trials shift and change depending on who seeks it. Perhaps no two heroes face exactly the same challenges. For Finn, the tasks revolve around kindness, bravery, and loyalty. For another, they might involve resisting temptation, showing mercy, or understanding wisdom. This adaptability makes the book feel alive, as though it actively participates in shaping the hero who claims it. In that sense, the Enchiridion is less a static object and more a mystical companion, one that grows with the world and the people who touch it. Another striking detail is how the Enchiridion evolves in meaning throughout the series. At first, it seems like a simple book for heroes, a charming relic that awards Finn's courage. Later, it becomes a linchpin in cosmic battles, a tool of unimaginable importance. This mirrors how knowledge works in our own lives. When we are young, a book may seem like a simple story. As we grow, we return to it, and suddenly we see layers we never noticed before. The Enchiridion capture this perfectly. It grows in depth, just as Finn does. What once felt like a bedtime story becomes a gateway to understanding the very fabric of reality. It's also worth noticing the physical design of the book. The purple cover, the star emblem, the golden accents. These details are simple but deliberate. They give the Enchiridion a timeless quality. It doesn't look overly ornate or flashy, which makes it believable as something ancient and true. The star in particular suggests guidance, light in the darkness, and the idea of navigation. Just as sailors once used stars to find their way across vast oceans, so too does Finn use this star-marked book to navigate the trials of life. The cover alone whispers of journeys yet to come, of secrets hidden just beneath the surface. The Enchiridion also stands as a symbol of trust between generations. When Finn holds it, he is not only receiving a reward for his bravery, but also inheriting a responsibility. The heroes of the past, whoever they were, must have once turned its pages just as Finn now does. It suggests an unbroken chain of courage, where every hero is part of a larger story. The book whispers to him that he is not alone, that others have struggled before him, and that others will continue long after him. For a boy who is the last human in Ooo, this is an especially powerful message. It connects him to something greater than his own loneliness, assuring him that humanity's spirit lives on through the choices of the brave. When we think of the Enchiridion in this way, it becomes less of an artifact and more of a sanctuary, a safe place where lessons are preserved, a library of the heart where a lonely boy can turn when the weight of the world feels heavy. In a land filled with uncertainty, where monsters lurk and kingdoms rise and fall, the book is a constant presence. Just knowing it exists is comforting, like a lantern glowing steadily in the night. And yet, as comforting as it can be, the Enchiridion is never just gentle. It is demanding. It requires sacrifice, growth, and hard truths. When Finn earns it, he does so by showing he can be selfless, that he can see beyond his own desires. The book rewards compassion just as much as strength. This is an important lesson tucked into its pages, that a true hero is not the one who swings the hardest sword, but the one who carries the heaviest heart and still chooses kindness. In many traditions, sacred books carry both wisdom and danger. To read them is to step into forbidden or divine knowledge, which can overwhelm the unready. The Enchiridion mirrors this duality. In the wrong hands, it can tear open the fabric of worlds. The Lich seeks it not for guidance, but for conquest. This creates a delicate tension. A book meant for heroes becomes a target for villains, and suddenly the very object that should protect life becomes the key to destroying it. This paradox gives the Enchiridion a haunting edge. It reminds us that no artifact, however noble, is immune to corruption when desire burns too hot. Consider how the book is used in the great cosmic struggles of Adventure Time. At one point, the Enchiridion acts as a bridge to higher planes of reality. It does not merely sit on a shelf gathering dust. It pulses with potential, capable of summoning cosmic entities or unlocking doors to realms where time and space lose meaning. It holds the kind of power that gods themselves might envy. And yet, this extraordinary potential is bound in the humble form of a book, a reminder that appearances in Ooo often hide truths far greater than the surface. The way the Enchiridion connects the earthly with the cosmic places it in a long tradition of mythological artifacts that serve as bridges. In Norse myth, Yggdrasil, the world tree, connects the 9 realms. In Greek stories, ambrosia and nectar link mortals to the divine. The Enchiridion joins this lineage, a small but mighty link between mortals like Finn and cosmic powers like Prismo or the cosmic owl. It shows us that even the smallest object can hold a doorway to eternity if it is infused with enough meaning and intent. But there is also something mischievous, almost playful, about the way the Enchiridion appears in Finn's life. It does not arrive as a solemn gift from a sage delivered in golden light. Instead, Finn has to go on a strange and at times silly adventure to claim it, fighting gnomes, outsmarting guardians, and puzzling his way through bizarre tests. This balance of humor and gravity is what makes Adventure Time so unique. Even the most powerful relics are discovered through moments of laughter, reminding us that the path to heroism is rarely straight and rarely without joy. Looking at it this way, the Enchiridion becomes a reflection of Finn's own spirit. He is not a solemn knight bound to grim duty. He is a child full of laughter, wonder, and mistakes, who nonetheless grows into his destiny. The book chooses him not because he is flawless, but because he is true. His imperfections, his stumbles, his stubborn optimism, all of these make him exactly the kind of person the Enchiridion was waiting for. It tells us that being a hero is not about being perfect, but about being authentic. We might even imagine that the Enchiridion has a consciousness of its own, subtle but ever-present. Perhaps it watches quietly from within its covers, sensing the intentions of those who hold it. To Finn, it opens like a patient teacher, guiding him forward. To the Lich, it becomes a weapon, perhaps reluctantly but inevitably bending to the will of its reader. This imagined awareness gives the book a personality, one that makes it more than ink and paper. It becomes a companion in the story, silent but essential, always shaping the journey in ways seen and unseen. One of the most powerful themes connected to the Enchiridion is the idea of choice. Every hero who touches it must decide what to do with the wisdom and power inside. Will they use it to heal or to harm, to guide or to control? In this way, the Enchiridion reflects the great truth that knowledge itself is never inherently good or evil. It is the choices of the one who holds it that matter. This makes the book endlessly relevant, not just in the Land of Ooo, but in our own lives. For what are our books, our lessons, and our histories, if not Enchiridions of a sort, guides that offer us paths but never force our feet to follow them? It is also telling that Finn, despite being given the Enchiridion, does not rely on it constantly. He does not flip through its pages every time he faces a problem. Instead, he carries it as a symbol, a reminder that he has already proven himself. The real lessons, it seems, are not meant to be reread endlessly, but lived out in action. This makes the Enchiridion not only a guidebook, but a graduation. Once a hero earns it, the world becomes their classroom. The book affirms that they are ready to take on the role they were destined for. When we picture Finn holding the Enchiridion, it is almost like watching a child hold a crown that is just a little too big for his head. He grows into it slowly, step by step, as the adventures unfold. The book does not demand instant greatness. It trusts that, given time, he will live up to its weight. This patience, this slow unfolding, feels like one of the most magical qualities of the Enchiridion. It is not in a rush, and it does not expect perfection. It waits quietly for its hero to become who they were always meant to be. If we follow the Enchiridion through Finn's story, we eventually see how it becomes tied into some of the grandest conflicts in Adventure Time. What began as a simple trial of worthiness grows into a key to unlocking the multiverse itself. This progression mirrors Finn's own journey. At first, he is a boy eager to prove himself, tackling monsters and rescuing princesses because it feels like the right thing to do. But as the story deepens, so too does Finn's understanding of what it means to be a hero. His challenges expand from local battles to cosmic dilemmas, from small acts of kindness to decisions that affect entire worlds. The Enchiridion grows with him, its importance rising alongside his own destiny. There is something very profound about how Adventure Time treats this artifact. In many fantasy stories, a magical book is simply a tool, a spell book with incantations, a manual of power. But the Enchiridion feels like something greater. It is a representation of the moral weight that every hero must carry. The book is not simply about teaching you how to win, but teaching you how to live. It does not ask you to memorize spells or sword techniques, but to embody the values of courage, compassion, and perseverance. In this way, it is less like a weapon and more like a compass, pointing always toward the path of true heroism. In its later appearances, we learn that the Enchiridion can be corrupted, its pages altered, even rewritten by those who wish to twist its power. The Lich, for example, seeks to use it as a tool for annihilation. This dual potential, once again, reflects the theme of choice. Even the most sacred guide can be defaced. Even the noblest artifact can be turned into a weapon. And yet, the fact that it can be restored, that it can be reclaimed by the worthy, shows us that goodness is never truly erased. The spirit of the book endures, even when its pages are bent to darker ends. From a symbolic point of view, the Enchiridion represents knowledge as both a gift and a responsibility. To read is to awaken. To awaken is to be faced with decisions that cannot be undone. For Finn, receiving the book means stepping into a life where his choices will matter, not just to himself, but to the world. The Enchiridion does not shield him from fear or loss. Instead, it assures him that he can meet those trials with the heart of a hero. This is why the book is so moving, and why it stands out among the many magical artifacts in Ooo. It is not about power, it is about readiness. If we step back and compare it to mythological inspirations, the Enchiridion feels like it borrows from several traditions. From medieval Europe, it echoes the heroic manuals and chivalric codes that knights were meant to uphold guides not just for battle, but for honor, humility, and service. From ancient Greece, it resembles the epics that young men were expected to learn. Stories of Odysseus or Achilles, which taught lessons about courage and consequence. Even in more mystical traditions, it reflects the grimoires of magicians, filled with wisdom that only the initiated could unlock. The Enchiridion blends all these influences into something uniquely its own, a playful, surreal, yet deeply sincere artifact that both parodies and honors the idea of the sacred book. Another parallel is with Joseph Campbell's idea of the hero's journey. In that cycle, the hero often receives a gift or talisman from a mentor figure, a sword, an amulet, or sometimes a book that will aid them on their path. This object is more than just a tool. It is a symbol of the hero's readiness to cross into the unknown. For Finn, the Enchiridion serves exactly this purpose. It is the key that tells him and us that his journey is not just about childish games anymore. It is about stepping into the ancient and eternal story of what it means to be a hero. Yet Adventure Time, true to its nature, never lets the Enchiridion feel too heavy or too sacred. There is always a touch of whimsy, a sense that the universe itself is smiling, even as it hands down this monumental responsibility. Finn's quest to earn it is full of strange humor, silly gags, and colorful characters. This playful tone is important because it reminds us that even the most serious journeys are not devoid of joy. The Enchiridion is not meant to strip the fun out of life. It is meant to guide Finn in living fully, with both laughter and courage. By the time we see the book tied into multiversal stakes, it almost feels like we've watched a child's toy grow into a crown. What was once an object of small adventures now has the weight of countless worlds resting upon it. And yet, it never loses that original charm. Even when cosmic portals open from its pages, we still remember the boy who proved himself worthy by showing kindness to tiny creatures and selflessness in the face of danger. That duality of innocence and enormity makes the Enchiridion unforgettable. As we close this first segment of our journey through the artifacts of Ooo, the Enchiridion leaves us with one final thought. True power is not found in weapons or crowns, but in the choices we make when no one is watching. A hero is not born when they lift a sword, but when they choose compassion over cruelty, courage over fear, and wisdom over impulse. The Enchiridion is, in essence, a book that teaches without speaking, a guide that does not force but invites. It says to each of us, "You already have the heart of a hero. Now live in a way that proves it." With that, the Enchiridion closes its pages for now, resting once more in the folds of Oo's history. It will wait, as it always has, for the next worthy soul who seeks it. Now that we've closed the Enchiridion and let it rest safely back on its shelf, our path through Oo's artifacts leads us to something far stranger, far more personal, and perhaps even more haunting. Unlike the Enchiridion, which carries the wisdom of countless heroes, this next artifact binds itself to just one boy, wrapping itself quite literally around his body and soul, the grass sword. At first glance, it hardly looks like an artifact at all. It isn't a heavy gauntlet forged in fire or a jeweled crown passed down by kings. It's a simple blade of grass, green and unassuming, curling delicately around Finn's arm. Yet behind its fragile appearance lies an ancient curse, one that changes not only the way Finn fights, but the way he sees himself. Finn's relationship with the grass sword begins in a moment of failure. His old sword has been destroyed, and in searching for a replacement, he stumbles upon this strange, living weapon. It chooses him in an instant, binding itself to his hand without permission, as though the boy had been marked by fate. From that point on, Finn no longer wields a sword. Instead, the sword wields him, curling up his arm and becoming a permanent part of his body. This is not the clean triumph of earning the Enchiridion. This is something messier, heavier. It is not a reward, but a burden, one that Finn will carry through victories and heartbreaks alike. The grass sword immediately feels different from other magical items in Ooo because it blurs the line between tool and curse. On one hand, it is undeniably powerful. It can extend and reshape itself, slicing through enemies with speed and elegance. It responds to Finn's movements like an extension of his own body, making him stronger in ways no ordinary weapon could. Yet every time he uses it, there is a lingering question. Is the sword helping him, or is it consuming him? That tension gives the grass sword a weight that no other artifact carries. In many mythologies, cursed swords appear as tests for heroes. From the cursed blades of Japanese folklore, which drain the life of their wielder, to the swords in European legends that cannot be unsheathed without blood being spilled, these weapons often promise great power at terrible cost. The grass sword belongs to this tradition. It binds itself to Finn as though whispering, "You wanted strength, and now you shall have it, but at a price you cannot yet understand." For Finn, the curse begins quietly. At first it is a useful weapon, though unsettling. But over time it digs deeper into his life, becoming more than a blade. It becomes a symbol of the struggles he faces as he grows up. Finn, after all, is not just a boy on adventures. He is a boy learning about pain, loss, and identity. The grass sword reflects that inner journey. It is beautiful and dangerous, helpful and destructive. A reminder that even the greatest gifts can turn into chains. There's something haunting about the way the sword merges with his arm. Unlike the Enchiridion, which he could put down or leave behind, the grass sword is inescapable. It is part of him. No matter where he goes, no matter what he does, the blade is there waiting, curling like ivy around his very being. This permanence makes it feel more like a scar than a tool, and yet, in its strange way, it also becomes part of his identity, shaping him into the hero he is destined to become. The most striking part of the grass sword story is how it leads directly into the creation of Fern, Finn's plant-like double. This is not just a side effect, but the culmination of the sword's curse. In binding itself to Finn, the sword plants a seed literally and figuratively that grows into another version of him. Fern is not simply a copy. He is a reflection, a shadow, a living echo of Finn's struggles and fears. In this way, the grass sword does something no ordinary artifact could ever do. It creates new life out of the bond it shares with its wielder. Imagine the weight of that realization for Finn. To pick up a sword is one thing. To have that sword twist into a version of yourself, to see your reflection walking and speaking and even resenting you, is something entirely different. It turns the grass sword into a symbol of identity itself, forcing Finn to face questions about who he truly is. Is he just a boy with a sword? Or has the sword made him something else entirely? Unlike the Enchiridion, which feels like a gift from the cosmos, the grass sword feels almost like a trick of fate. Finn did not seek it, nor did he prove himself worthy of it. It simply appeared, bound itself to him, and refused to let go. This lack of choice is essential to its meaning. Sometimes in life, the burdens we carry are not ones we earned or asked for. They arrive suddenly, uninvited, and we are left to decide how to live with them. The grass sword captures that truth with startling clarity. And yet, there is also a strange beauty to it. When Finn fights with the sword, the movements are fluid, graceful, almost like a dance. The blade spirals and whips with an elegance that feels alive. It is not cold steel, but something organic, something breathing. This natural quality makes it both eerie and enchanting. It is not an object to be forged or broken. It is something that grows, adapts, and evolves. That living quality sets it apart from every other artifact in Ooo. When we think about cursed artifacts, it's easy to imagine them as objects of pure malice, dark relics designed only to harm, whispering poison into the minds of those who dare to touch them. But the grass sword doesn't fit neatly into that mold. Its curse is not immediate destruction. It doesn't burn Finn or twist him into something monstrous overnight. Instead, it lingers, patient, almost gentle in the way ivy grows over stone. Day by day, inch by inch, it tightens its hold. That slow process is what makes the grass sword so fascinating. It's not just an external danger, but an internal one. Finn has to live with it, adapt to it, and eventually accept that he cannot fully control it. The sword will unfurl when it wishes, strike when it pleases, and remind Finn that he is never entirely free of its influence. The uncertainty of whether it is truly his ally or something far darker gives every battle an added weight. Even in victory, there's the sense that the sword might be leading him somewhere he does not want to go. This duality, both blessing and curse, mirrors Finn's journey through adolescence. He is at the age where power and responsibility collide, where strength is both thrilling and terrifying. The grass sword embodies that tension. When he swings it, he feels unstoppable. Yet he knows that power is not truly his own, that it comes from something he cannot fully trust. For anyone growing up, there is a moment when you realize that strength, freedom, and identity come with hidden costs. Finn learns that lesson through the blade wrapped around his arm. The more we follow this story, the clearer it becomes that the grass sword was never just a weapon. It was a seed, planting roots deep in Finn's life until they grew into fern. Fern is perhaps the most haunting result of the curse because he is not simply a monster or an enemy. He is Finn's reflection, born from the same essence, sharing the same memories, but shaped by the curse's twisting influence. When Fern appears, he carries with him the weight of inevitability. It's as though the grass sword had always been working toward this point, always preparing to bloom into something larger than itself. Fern is that bloom, beautiful, tragic, and dangerous all at once. He fights with Finn's skill, but his heart is clouded by bitterness. He is what Finn could become if he let anger and despair take root. What makes this especially powerful is the intimacy of it all. Most villains in Adventure Time come from outside forces, monsters, sorcerers, ancient evils. But Fern is born from within Finn's own journey, from the artifact that refused to let him go. Their battles feel less like hero against villain, and more like boy against self. Every swing of Fern's blade carries the echo of Finn's doubts, his fears, his hidden darkness. In that way, the grass sword transforms from an object into a mirror, forcing Finn to face the parts of himself he might rather ignore. It's also worth noticing how natural the grass sword feels compared to other weapons. Swords of steel can be broken, magical staves can be shattered, but the grass sword grows. When damaged, it heals. When struck down, it can sprout again like grass, pushing up through the cracks in stone. This resilience makes it feel less like an object and more like a force of nature, something eternal and unstoppable. Even after Finn loses an arm, the sword remains, adapting and reshaping itself into the cursed grass arm that becomes part of him. In this way, it refuses to be forgotten, clinging to life with the same stubborn persistence as the natural world itself. And perhaps that is what makes the curse so poetic. The grass sword is not evil in the same way the lich or gulb are evil. It is more like a reminder of nature's indifference. Grass will grow whether you want it to or not. It will take root, climb walls, and push through ruins. It does not care who it binds itself to. For Finn, this indifference is both liberating and terrifying. The sword is not his enemy, but it is not truly his friend either. It is simply a force that exists, and he must learn how to live with it. The mythological echoes here are powerful. In many stories, cursed weapons are not created to punish their wielder directly, but to reveal something about them. They draw out hidden truths, amplify inner conflicts, and show the hero who they really are when the mask of control slips. The grass sword does exactly this. It shows us a Finn who is stronger than he knows, but also more fragile than he admits. It reveals his capacity for compassion when he faces Fern, and his capacity for despair when he realizes he cannot undo the curse. Oh, when we see Finn with the grass sword, it is not just a boy fighting with a weapon. It is a boy wrestling with destiny. Every strike, every victory, every failure is shared with the blade curled around his arm. The curse is not only a shadow on his path, it is the path itself, twisting him toward lessons he never asked to learn but cannot avoid. As the curse deepens, we come to understand that the grass sword was never content to remain a simple tool. It was always reaching, always evolving, until finally it gave rise to Fern. Fern is not just another opponent in Finn's long list of adventures. He is something far more intimate, a living embodiment of the curse, shaped into a reflection of Finn's potential and his pain. From the moment Fern appears, there's a tension in the air that feels different from any other conflict in Ooo. Finn has faced monsters, tyrants, even cosmic beings beyond imagination. But Fern carries his voice, his memories, his same heroic spark, twisted just slightly out of shape. To look at Fern is to look into a funhouse mirror, where all of Finn's doubts and mistakes are amplified. His presence asks a haunting question. If Finn had made different choices, would he have become Fern? This makes their battles uniquely heartbreaking. When Finn raises his blade against Fern, he is not simply fighting to protect others. He is fighting a distorted piece of himself. The clash of their swords feels less like good versus evil, and more like hope versus despair, two sides of the same coin, locked in endless struggle. And though Fern lashes out in anger, beneath it all is a sadness, a longing to be more than just the shadow of someone else. Fern's story is a reminder that the curse of the grass sword is not only about power, it is about identity. By binding itself to Finn, the sword ensured that its influence would ripple into his very sense of self. When Fern emerges, we see how deeply the curse has entangled itself in the boy's life, creating an entirely new being who cannot escape the burden of being the other Finn. There's a poetic ache in Fern's journey. He wants to be his own person, yet he cannot separate from the curse that created him. He is born in opposition to Finn, yet also defined by him. In this sense, Fern is both victim and villain, cursed not only by the blade of grass, but by the cruel fate of existing as a reflection, rather than a true original. His battles are not only against Finn, but against the very fact of his existence. When Fern finally meets his end, there is no triumphant celebration. Instead, there is sorrow. His passing is quiet, mournful, and strangely tender, especially in the way Finn responds. Instead of hatred, Finn offers compassion. He mourns Fern not as an enemy, but as someone who deserved more than what destiny gave him. This moment of mercy transforms the curse's story into something deeply human, a tale of grief, forgiveness, and acceptance. And through it all, the grass sword lingers, a silent witness. It never speaks, yet its influence is undeniable. It began as an armament, grew into a curse, and finally gave birth to a being who shaped the course of Finn's life in ways no ordinary weapon ever could. The fact that an artifact could reshape destiny so profoundly makes it one of the most haunting relics in all of Ooo. The symbolism of the grass sword doesn't stop with Fern's tragedy. When Finn loses his arm and the curse manifests as a living grass arm, we are reminded again of the blade's resilience. This new limb is not simply a weapon, it is a constant presence, a daily reminder that Finn cannot fully sever himself from the artifact's influence. He wakes, he eats, he explores the world, all with the knowledge that part of him belongs to something he never chose. And yet, there is beauty in that as well. The grass arm gives Finn strength he might not have had otherwise. It heals, it adapts, it allows him to keep fighting when all seems lost. Even in its curse there is a gift, though it comes at a price. This paradox strength, born of suffering, sits at the very heart of the grass sword's story. Thematically, this speaks to the way life often works. We do not get to choose every burden placed upon us. Sometimes hardships attach themselves without warning, wrapping around us like vines, and yet, in learning to live with them, we grow stronger. Finn does not erase the curse. He carries it. He bends with it, adapts to it, and in doing so discovers resilience that makes him who he is. The grass sword, for all its danger, becomes a symbol of endurance. Looking at mythology, cursed weapons often carry this same duality. In Norse tales, there are blades said to thirst for blood, demanding sacrifice from anyone who wields them. In Japanese folklore, there are swords infused with spirits that bend their wielders towards strange destinies. These stories remind us that power is never free, and that strength taken from unnatural sources always comes with hidden costs. The grass sword fits neatly into this tradition, yet adds its own unique twist. It does not simply curse, it creates. From its curse blooms an entirely new being, and from that being, lessons that echo through Finn's life. In the end, the grass sword is not just a tale of danger. It is a tale of growth, of facing shadows, and of finding light even when bound by vines that refuse to let go. Finn's journey with the blade reminds us that every curse carries a lesson, and sometimes the deepest struggles shape the strongest hearts. If we step back and look at the grass sword's entire arc, from the moment Finn first picks it up to the final tragedy of Fern, a pattern begins to emerge. It is the pattern of transformation. This is not the kind of story where an artifact is simply gained, used, and discarded. No, this is a living, shifting relationship. The sword reshapes itself, reshapes Finn, and even reshapes the very concept of what it means to be a hero. Think of how it begins. A boy finds a strange weapon and feels a surge of power. That's a familiar story across countless myths. But what makes the grass sword different is what follows. Instead of simply serving its wielder, it grows into his body, weaving its destiny into his flesh and soul. From there, the curse flowers outward, birthing Fern, a rival and mirror. And in Fern's passing, we are left with not emptiness, but memory. Finn continues onward, carrying the lessons of what the curse forced him to confront. The sword's influence lingers not in steel or vines, but in the quiet strength Finn learns through sorrow. This is why the grass sword is more than just a cursed artifact. It is a story about the cycle of growth and decay, about how even something painful can give rise to new life. Grass, after all, is a plant that withers and returns, season after season. No matter how many times it is cut down, it rises again. That same rhythm plays out in the artifact's tail. It falls into Finn's hands, binds itself to him, sprouts into fern, withers in death, and leaves behind the fertile ground of memory. Out of loss grows resilience. Out of endings grow beginnings. And that, in many ways, is what makes this relic so hauntingly beautiful. Unlike a sword of fire or a crown of ice, the grass sword is not about dominance or spectacle. It is about patience, persistence, and inevitability. It teaches us that not all curses arrive in explosions of power. Some come quietly, wrapping around us until they become a part of who we are. They cannot be undone, but they can be understood. When Finn finally parts ways with the curse, it does not feel like victory in the traditional sense. There are no grand celebrations, no triumphant proclamations. Instead, it feels like saying goodbye to something that has been with you for so long it has become inseparable from your identity. A burden, yes, but also a teacher. A shadow, but one that carved out light in the spaces it left behind. The boy who first grasped the blade was not the same young man who emerged from its grip. The sword left its mark, not only on his arm, but on his heart. In the broader mythos of Ooo, the grass sword stands as a reminder of how closely magic is tied to life itself. Many artifacts in this world are relics of science or vessels of ancient sorcery, but the grass sword feels different. It feels alive. It pulses with the same inevitability as nature, reminding us that magic in Ooo is not only about grand cosmic powers, but also about the quiet persistence of life. Even in the aftermath of a nuclear apocalypse, even in a world broken by war, grass will still grow. That resilience is mirrored in the blade and in Finn's own spirit. And isn't it fitting in a strange way that such a curse would bind itself to a hero like Finn? For all his courage, Finn has always been a character rooted in growth. He is not a static, unchanging champion. He makes mistakes, he learns, he evolves. Just like grass, he bends and sways, but does not break. The grass sword amplifies his truths, pushing him through trials that shape him into someone wiser, someone stronger, someone more human. In the end, the tale of the grass sword is not only about power or even about curse. It is about identity. It asks, who are you when something outside your control shapes your path? Do you crumble under its weight, or do you grow with it, adapting, finding strength in the cracks? Finn shows us the latter. He shows us that even when bound by vines of fate, one can still reach upward toward the light. And so, as we set the grass sword back on its pedestal in our bedtime catalog of artifacts, we leave it not as an object of fear, but as a symbol of the complicated beauty of growth. It was never a simple weapon. It was a story, living and breathing, told through battle, grief, and renewal. A story that reminds us that even curses can teach, and even burdens can bloom into something worth remembering. Now, with the grass sword's tail gently resting in our minds, we turn the page of this quiet catalog to the next artifact, another relic with its own shadowed past, waiting patiently to be remembered. The world of Ooo is filled with swords and crowns and spell books, each glittering with legends of their own. But not every artifact is a blade or a grimoire. Some take the form of armor, not only to shield the body, but also to carry the weight of history. Among these is one of the most poignant relics of all, the Gauntlet of the Hero. At first glance, it looks like a simple piece of gear, a mechanical glove, large and heavy, built for combat and strength. But like so many artifacts in Ooo, its surface tells only the smallest part of its story. Beneath the steel lies a legacy tied not to grand kings or cosmic entities, but to someone who lived and died in the shadow of heroism. That person is Shoko, the sister of Princess Bubblegum, in another life, a thief who wandered the edges of destiny and found herself caught between chance and tragedy. Shoko is not a character who appears often, and that is what makes her story so haunting. We meet her through flashes of memory, visions of the past that show us a girl who never quite belonged anywhere. She was not chosen by fate like Finn. She was not crowned like Bubblegum. She was someone who scraped and stole and survived. And yet it was Shoko who wore the Gauntlet of the Hero, not as a symbol of greatness fulfilled, but as a reminder of greatness lost. The gauntlet itself is more than a weapon. It is a piece of armor infused with power, allowing its wearer to perform feats of strength beyond ordinary limits. In Shoko's hands it became both tool and curse. With it she could fight, steal, and defend herself against the dangers of Ooo. But it also tied her fate to the moment that would define her end. When she betrayed Bubblegum in a desperate attempt to fulfill a job, the gauntlet bore witness to her fall. And when she died alone by the river, her body sinking into the shadows, the gauntlet remained behind, a relic waiting for someone else to uncover it. There is something deeply poetic about this. Unlike the Enchiridion, which was forged as a beacon of heroism, or the grass sword, which reshaped destiny itself, the Gauntlet of the Hero is a relic of failure. It does not celebrate victory. It mourns the cost of mistakes, the quiet end of someone who could have been so much more. In that sense, it holds a different kind of magic, one not bound to cosmic law or elemental power, but to memory. When Finn eventually discovers the gauntlet, it becomes a bridge between past and present. He does not know Shoko, not in the way we glimpse her, but by wearing the gauntlet, he steps into her shadow, carrying on a story that might have been forgotten forever. The artifact allows her legacy to live, not as a tale of failure, but as a whisper that even those who stumble can still pass something onward. This makes the Gauntlet of the Hero one of the most human artifacts in Ooo. It is not about world-ending curses or divine prophecies. It is about one life, one choice, and the weight that follows. When Finn uses the gauntlet, we are reminded that heroism is not always born from perfection. Sometimes it comes from acknowledging those who came before, those who faltered, and choosing to carry their burden forward with kindness rather than judgment. There's also a layer of mythological resonance here. Across cultures, relics of armor often symbolize unfinished battles or unfulfilled destinies. A knight's shield left behind in the ruins of a castle, a samurai's helmet resting in a forgotten shrine, a fallen warrior's breastplate buried beneath the earth. These objects are not simply tools of war, they are reminders of stories cut short. The Gauntlet of the Hero fits neatly into this tradition. It is not complete on its own. It is a fragment, a shard of someone's life, whispering about what might have been. And when Finn wears it, he does not erase Shoko's story. He continues it, reshaping it into something new. In this way, the gauntlet becomes both a memorial and a promise. A memorial for the girl who wore it first, and a promise that her memory will not be lost. As we sit with this artifact in the quiet of bedtime, there's a gentle melancholy to it. It asks us to think about the ways in which our lives ripple beyond our own time. Shoko may have died alone, but her gauntlet lived on, finding its way into the hands of another hero. And through that connection, her story, however brief, became a thread woven into the greater tapestry of Ooo. The gauntlet of the hero reminds us that even unfinished lives have meaning. Even failures leave behind echoes. And sometimes, the weight of an artifact is not in the power it grants, but in the memory it carries. To understand the weight of the gauntlet of the hero, we need to pause and look more closely at Shoko herself. Her life is not laid out in long chronicles or epic tales. Instead, we glimpse her through fragments half-faded memories, ghostly visions that appear to Finn when the story demands it. But in those fragments, we see enough to piece together a haunting portrait of someone who never truly had a chance to stand in the light. Shoko's backstory begins in abandonment. As a child, she was given away by her parents in exchange for a cybernetic arm, a cruel trade that stripped her of belonging before she even had a chance to grow roots. From that moment, she was set adrift, a wanderer with no family to return to and no foundation to stand upon. Her mechanical arm became both a mark of loss and a symbol of resilience. With it, she survived, stealing and fighting her way through Ooo. Yet it also branded her as someone different, someone who could never quite blend in with those around her. It is within this life of struggle that she crossed paths with the Princess Bubblegum. The relationship between Shoko and Bubblegum is one of those rare glimpses into the tender undercurrents of Adventure Time's world. For a brief moment, Shoko found something she had never known before a friend. Bubblegum treated her not as a thief, not as an outcast, but as someone worthy of kindness. In another story, that might have been the turning point, the moment where a broken life began to heal. But Shoko's path was not so simple. She was bound to the choices that survival demanded. Tasked with stealing from Bubblegum, she faced the impossible weight of betrayal. To complete her mission meant to destroy the one bond she had. To refuse meant to risk everything. And in the end, the gauntlet she carried bore witness to that decision. She tried to take what was not hers, and in doing so, sealed her own fate. When Shoko dies, her story does not end with grand final words or the sweeping notes of destiny. It ends quietly, with her slipping into the shadows by a riverbank, her gauntlet left behind as the only proof she ever existed. There is something deeply human in that image. Most of us will not end with songs or statues, but with the small traces of what we leave behind. For Shoko, that trace was the gauntlet of the hero. And yet even in her failure, even in her solitude, her story did not vanish. The gauntlet lingered through time, and when Finn discovered it, her memory stirred once more. Through his visions of her ghost, we see not a villain, but a girl who was lost and searching, a girl who could not escape the weight of the life given to her. Her presence lingers not in bitterness, but in quiet longing. She watches over Finn as if hoping that he might succeed where she could not. This connection between Finn and Shoko transforms the gauntlet into more than a weapon. It becomes a bridge across time, a link between two souls separated by generations, but bound by the shared thread of heroism. Finn is not Shoko, and Shoko is not Finn, but through the gauntlet they meet. And in that meeting, Shoko's legacy shifts. She is no longer remembered only for her betrayal or her lonely death. She is remembered for the strength she carried, for the bond she once had with Bubblegum, and for the gauntlet that would one day help another hero on his journey. There is a bittersweet beauty in this. So often, History remembers only the victors, only the great champions whose names are carved into stone. But the Gauntlet of the hero reminds us that even those who falter can leave behind something meaningful. Shoko's story is not one of triumph, but of struggle, and yet it echoes all the same. Her gauntlet is proof that even an unfinished life has the power to shape the future. And when we think of Bubblegum, standing centuries later as a ruler, perhaps she still remembers the girl with the mechanical arm. Perhaps the sight of the gauntlet, even in Finn's hands, stirs memories of a time long past. If so, then Shoko is not forgotten. She lives on in both the artifact and the hearts of those who once knew her. When we take a closer look at the Gauntlet of the hero, we realize that it carries a weight far greater than its metallic frame suggests. At first glance, it is a weapon powerful, practical, a tool of defense and attack. But in the way Adventure Time weaves its stories, no artifact is ever just an artifact. The gauntlet becomes a mirror, reflecting the burdens of those who wield it. For Shoko, it was an emblem of survival and unfinished dreams. For Finn, it became something more, a bridge between past mistakes and future possibilities. Symbolically, the gauntlet embodies duality. It represents both betrayal and redemption. Shoko stole it, driven by necessity, her actions branded by desperation rather than malice. Her theft marked her downfall, tying the gauntlet to tragedy. But when Finn dons the same glove, it no longer serves the story of betrayal. Instead, it becomes a symbol of justice, of bravery, of a hero stepping forward to protect others. The same artifact, carrying the memory of failure, transforms in Finn's hands into a vessel of hope. This is where the gauntlet's deeper meaning comes alive. It shows us that objects, like people, are not bound forever by the circumstances of their past. A weapon that once brought ruin can become a tool of protection. A story that once ended in sorrow can ripple forward, reshaped in new hands. In this way, the gauntlet reflects the larger theme of Adventure Time. That history does not have to chain us. Instead, we can build upon what came before, changing its meaning with the choices we make. Finn's connection to the gauntlet is especially poignant because he sees Shoko. In the visions where her ghostly form appears, he acknowledges her presence, her unfinished journey. This encounter is more than a supernatural event. It's an act of recognition. Shoko, who died alone and forgotten, finds someone who sees her, who carries her memory forward. Through Finn, her story is validated. She is no longer only the girl who failed. She becomes part of a greater legacy of heroism. There's also an intimate layer to this connection. Finn's journey has always been about forging identity, discovering who he is in a world that constantly shifts between magic, chaos, and danger. Shoko's presence becomes a quiet reflection of what Finn could have been. A child lost to circumstance, hardened by survival, and consumed by choices beyond her control. By inheriting her gauntlet, Finn symbolically inherits her struggle, but he also has the chance to rise above it. In that sense, the gauntlet is less about power and more about choice. The Demon Blood Sword is one of the most striking and mysterious weapons in all of Ooo. Unlike other artifacts, which often feel tied to ancient myths or forgotten ruins, this sword carries a deeply personal connection to Finn and his family. It is not just a tool of power, but also a bridge to his father, Joshua, and to the shadowy history that Finn never fully understood. In this way, it stands apart from the Enchiridion, the grass sword, or even the Gauntlet of the hero. Those items reach across time and history, but the Demon Blood Sword reaches straight into the heart of Finn's identity. The sword's origin is tangled up in Joshua's eccentric adventures. Joshua, Finn's adoptive dog father, was always dabbling in battles with strange creatures, using wit and bravado to survive in a world filled with danger. One such encounter involved a demon, and rather than being consumed by it, Joshua outwitted the creature. In true Joshua fashion, he didn't just defeat the demon, he trapped it, binding its essence into a weapon. From that clash, the Demon Blood Sword was born, its hilt shaped from the demon's body, its blade flowing with supernatural energy. That detail alone makes it unlike most other weapons we've seen. It is alive, in a sense, pulsing with the spirit of the creature it once was. Its handle resembles a snarling face, and its design feels less crafted than conjured, like something forced into being by circumstance rather than forged by a steady hand. This makes the sword unsettling, even to look at, yet undeniably captivating. In a world where magical weapons often symbolize higher ideals, the Demon Blood Sword stands as something rawer and more primal. It is born not of myth or destiny, but of conflict and capture. When Finn inherits this sword, the moment feels like a quiet passing of a torch. Joshua is gone, and the sword becomes one of the few tangible connections Finn has to him. Unlike most fathers and sons, their bond is preserved not through stories or gentle lessons, but through an object that carries the echo of Joshua's choices. In this way, the Demon Blood Sword becomes a family heirloom, but one with jagged edges. It is as much a reminder of Joshua's wildness and flaws as it is of his courage. For Finn, carrying the Demon Blood Sword is different from wielding any other weapon. With the grass sword, he bore the weight of a curse. With the gauntlet, he carried the memory of a forgotten girl. But with the Demon Blood Sword, he feels something more intimate. It is as though every swing is a dialogue with his father, every spark of its crimson blade an echo of Joshua's reckless spirit. Even the unsettling nature of the sword reflects that relationship. Finn never had a neat or simple connection with his origins. His life was a patchwork, stitched together by chance, adoption, and survival. The Demon Blood Sword fits that patchwork perfectly, dangerous, flawed, yet undeniably his. The sword's voice is subtle but powerful. In some moments it almost feels as if it has a will of its own, urging Finn forward, guiding his strikes, or reminding him of its presence with that eerie, glowing light. Unlike the Enchiridion, which whispers the wisdom of ancient heroes, or the grass sword, which binds itself like a parasite, the Demon Blood Sword carries an echo of defiance. It is not a guiding hand, but a wild force at Finn's side, waiting for him to decide what to do with it. This dynamic plays beautifully into Adventure Time's theme of choice. Finn could see the Demon Blood Sword as a burden, a weapon born of cruelty and fear, but instead he claims it as his own. He swings it in defense of his friends, uses it to protect the innocent, and imbues it with meaning far different from its origins. Just as Joshua transformed a demon into a weapon, Finn transforms that weapon into an instrument of justice. It is the cycle of inheritance reframed. What begins in violence can end in protection if wielded with care. The aesthetics of the sword also amplify its symbolic weight. Its glowing red blade, sharp and jagged, cuts a striking image whenever Finn wields it in battle. It is not elegant like the golden glow of sacred relics, nor is it haunting like the creeping vines of the grass sword. Instead, it feels dangerous, unpredictable, as if it could just as easily turn against its wielder as serve them. That tension makes it one of the most fascinating magical items in Ooo. What makes the Demon Blood Sword so memorable is that it doesn't just exist as a prop in Finn's adventures. It deepens his character, forcing him to wrestle with questions about legacy, identity, and what it means to inherit the choices of those who came before. And unlike the silent relics of Oo's forgotten past, this sword is alive, its snarling face and crimson glow constantly reminding Finn and us that the past is never entirely at rest. When Finn begins wielding the Demon Blood Sword in earnest, it immediately sets itself apart from any weapon he had carried before. Its strikes are heavier, its energy more intense, almost as if the blade itself is eager for conflict. In battle, it shines with a crimson glow that feels alive, pulsing with each swing, and sometimes sparking as though it is feeding on the clash of combat. For Finn, this was not just a weapon upgrade, it was an emotional weight, a reminder that he was stepping into shoes once worn by Joshua, someone he both admired and never fully understood. This weight carried into the way Finn fought. With the grass sword, every swing came with hesitation, a fear of the curse that clung to him. But with the Demon Blood Sword, Finn leaned into the chaos. It gave him a kind of confidence, a boldness, as if his father's energy was running through him. Yet there was always an edge of danger, an awareness that this weapon was not entirely tame. It could be trusted, but only in the way one trusts fire, useful when controlled, but perilous if left unchecked. What makes this weapon fascinating is how it forced Finn to grow as both a warrior and a person. He wasn't just swinging a tool, he was shouldering a legacy. Joshua was never a perfect father figure. He was reckless, often selfish, and sometimes left trails of chaos in his wake. The Demon Blood Sword reflects that imperfection. It is jagged, raw, and unsettling. By carrying it, Finn wasn't embracing an idealized version of his father. He was embracing the truth that family legacies are complicated, filled with flaws as well as strengths. The sword also played a role in Finn's relationships. When his friends saw him wield it, there was often an unspoken recognition that this was something different. Jake especially had a complicated reaction to it. As Joshua's son, he knew more about their father's misadventures than Finn ever could. The sight of Finn carrying a weapon forged out of one of Joshua's strangest encounters must have stirred a mixture of pride, amusement, and perhaps a touch of unease. After all, Jake grew up with Joshua's chaos while Finn inherited its relics. That difference shaped the way each brother connected to their shared past. Princess Bubblegum, too, seemed to sense the uniqueness of the Demon Blood Sword. Unlike the technological or magical tools she often created, this sword was raw magic, tinged with demonic essence. In Finn's hands, it represented something she couldn't easily analyze or control, yet she respected it. Perhaps because she could see the way it connected Finn to his identity. Where science and magic often clashed in her worldview, the Demon Blood Sword stood outside both categories. It was a weapon that couldn't be explained, only experienced. In battle, the sword proved invaluable. Whether against hordes of monsters, magical threats, or cosmic dangers, the Demon Blood Sword cut through with a force that elevated Finn's combat skills. It wasn't just sharp steel, it was alive, its crimson energy burning through obstacles that normal weapons could never pierce. At times, it even seemed to anticipate Finn's movements, like a partner rather than a tool. This uncanny synergy blurred the line between wielder and weapon, making Finn's battles feel less like one boy with a sword and more like two forces moving in harmony. And yet, harmony with a demon-possessed weapon is never without cost. The sword's unsettling energy hinted at something darker, something lurking beneath its surface. It never fully consumed Finn, but there was always a whisper of unease in its presence. Was he controlling it, or was it shaping him? That tension added depth to Finn's character. He wasn't just a boy swinging a sword. He was a young hero learning to balance the chaos of inheritance, the temptation of power, and the need to remain true to himself. Perhaps one of the most poignant aspects of the Demon Blood Sword is how it gave Finn a chance to carry something of Joshua with him. Growing up, Finn never knew his real parents, and while Joshua and Margaret raised him with care, their lives were filled with strange choices and dangerous encounters. By wielding the sword Joshua had created, Finn was able to walk in some small way alongside his father. Every swing was a reminder that even in absence, Joshua's legacy lived on. This duality, danger and connection, chaos and belonging, is what makes the Demon Blood Sword so compelling in the tapestry of Oo's magical artifacts. It is not clean, not neat, not a pristine relic of ancient times. It is messy, alive, and deeply personal, just like family. The Demon Blood Sword stands apart because it feels more like a character than an object. Every time Finn wields it, we're reminded that there's a restless spirit bound within its crimson light. Unlike the silent Enchiridion or the creeping parasitic grass sword, this blade hums with presence. It doesn't whisper like a mentor or cling like a curse. Instead, it radiates a raw and restless energy, as though the demon within still resents its imprisonment, even while serving its purpose. This makes every strike layered with tension. Is Finn truly in control, or is he merely channeling the power of a creature that would rather be free? This ambiguity is what ties the Demon Blood Sword so closely to the theme of inheritance. Joshua may have trapped the demon and forged the weapon, but in doing so, he left behind a paradox for his son. The sword is both a gift and a burden. It is powerful, yes, but it is also tainted. Joshua's legacy is exactly the same, filled with bravery, but also reckless decisions and unintended consequences. Finn inherits not only the weapon, but also the responsibility of deciding how to carry that legacy forward. This is the heart of the Demon Blood Sword symbolism. The family history is never clean, and it is up to each generation to reshape it. The sword also connects to larger mythological traditions. In countless legends, there are weapons infused with the essence of demons, gods, or spirits. In Japanese folklore, there are tales of cursed swords that thirst for blood, shaping the destiny of their wielders. In Western myth, there are blades forged from the bodies or essences of monsters, trophies of victory that become tools of war. The Demon Blood Sword sits comfortably among these archetypes, drawing on a timeless fascination with weapons that are more than just steel. They are alive, bound with intention, demanding as much from their wielder as they give in return. What makes the Adventure Time version so uniquely poignant is how personal it feels. It isn't just a legendary artifact lying forgotten in a ruin, waiting for a hero to claim it. It was created by Joshua, wielded by Finn, and tied directly into the messy fabric of one family. Its myth is not about forgotten ages of Ooo, but about the intimate and imperfect lives of the people we know. That closeness makes it resonate in a way that ancient relics never could. Finn's relationship with the sword evolves over time, just as his relationship with himself evolves. At first, it is simply a weapon, exciting and powerful, something to replace the tools he had outgrown. But the more he carries it, the more it reflects back at him. In the sword's crimson light, we see Finn coming to terms with what it means to be human in a magical world, what it means to have parents whose choices were messy and flawed, and what it means to take those choices and build something new. Blade's demonic essence adds another layer to this theme. Demons in Adventure Time often symbolize temptation, chaos, and destruction. Yet Finn takes this demonic energy and bends it toward good. In doing so, he demonstrates one of the series' most enduring lessons. That darkness, when acknowledged and accepted, can be transformed into something meaningful. Just as Marceline channels her vampiric nature into music and love, and just as Simon struggles with the corruption of the ice crown, Finn uses the demon blood sword as a way of reconciling with imperfection. It is not about denying the darkness, but about choosing how to use it. This is why the sword's appearance in battle is always so striking. When Finn swings it, it cuts not only through enemies, but through the very tension of his own identity. He is a boy, fragile and uncertain, but also a warrior who carries the weight of legacies far larger than himself. The Crimson Blade becomes a visual reminder of that inner conflict. The glow of something dangerous, reshaped into something protective. It's a beacon of choice. We can also see echoes of this weapon in the way it interacts with Finn's other tools and artifacts. The grass sword clings to him as an unwanted curse. The Enchiridion calls him toward higher planes of existence. The Gauntlet connects him to a forgotten girl's tragic fate. But the demon blood sword is intimate, immediate, personal. It ties directly to family, to inheritance, to the way children must make sense of the gifts and burdens their parents leave behind. Together, these weapons form a kind of symbolic map of Finn's journey. Knowledge, curse, legacy, and family. Perhaps what makes the demon blood sword so memorable is that it never stops feeling alive. Even when it is at rest, strapped to Finn's side, its snarling hilt and glowing edge remind us that it is not fully at peace. The demon's spirit lingers, restless and defiant, echoing Joshua's reckless energy. It is not a calm artifact. It is a blade that demands attention, that refuses to fade quietly into history. And for Finn, that demand becomes part of his own story, pushing him to grow, to choose, to wield not only the weapon, but also the meaning it represents. In this way, the demon blood sword is both a challenge and a gift. It challenges Finn to grapple with the past, to face the shadows left by those who came before him. And it gives him the strength to carve his own path, to transform those shadows into light. The sword's layered symbolism also ties directly into themes of inheritance and what we pass down through generations. Joshua may have thought he was leaving Finn a helpful tool, but in reality, he was also leaving him the baggage of unfinished battles and lingering grudges in a world like Ooo, where heroes are defined not only by their victories, but also by the weight they carry from those who came before. The demon blood sword acts almost like a reminder that history is never completely buried. Every strike Finn made with it echoed with Joshua's choices, as though his father's shadow stretched into the present. And yet, despite its origins in vengeance, the sword itself often felt strangely nurturing. Unlike the grass sword, which seemed to operate with a will of its own, or the night sword and other cursed weapons, the demon blood sword genuinely felt like it wanted to protect Finn. Its fiery energy flared brightest when Finn was in danger, suggesting it was less a parasite and more a guardian. This gave it a very different role compared to other dark artifacts in the show, Rather than consuming its wielder, it amplified Finn's bravery, standing almost like a phantom parent, watching over him in battle. This duality, born of blood and fury, yet transformed into a shield for the innocent, is part of why fans still debate the true alignment of the demon blood sword. Was it evil by nature, tainted forever by Joshua's bloody dealings? Or did it transcend that through Finn's own purity of heart, becoming something good despite its demonic core? The show never gives a clear answer, which is perhaps the point. Objects in Ooo, like people, are not bound to a single role forever. They can shift, evolve, and even redeem themselves through the choices of those who wield them. Now, if we look a little deeper, the sword also draws from mythological archetypes of cursed blades. Across folklore, there are countless stories of weapons created through sacrifice or dark magic blades that drink blood, swords that can only be wielded by chosen heirs, or weapons tied to spirits of vengeance. The demon blood sword fits right into that lineage. Some fans compare it to Norse myths, like Tyrfing, a sword forged with a curse that brought doom to its bearers even as it granted victory. Others see traces of Japanese folklore, where blades are often vessels of restless spirits. The show doesn't tie it directly to any one culture, but it borrows from that global sense that swords are not just tools, they're characters, with wills and destinies of their own. The way Finn eventually loses the demon blood sword is another poignant chapter. It's not destroyed in some grand final battle, nor does it betray him. Instead, it simply vanishes from the story, lost during a confrontation with the grass sword. One cursed artifact swallowed another, as if to say that Oo's magical world is always in flux, with one power rising while another fades away. Some fans interpret this as a metaphor for Finn himself outgrowing the weapon. By the time it was gone, Finn had become strong enough to stand on his own, no longer needing the fiery inheritance of his father. It's almost as though the sword chose its exit, disappearing when its purpose was complete. What lingers, though, is the feeling it gave. The demon blood sword was more than just fire and steel. It was a story about family, about the weight of legacy, and about how even dark beginnings can lead to something protective, even noble. Every time Finn swung it, the flames didn't just light up the battlefield, they illuminated the complicated ties between parents and children, between past sins and present courage. So when we think of the demon blood sword, it isn't only as one of Finn's coolest weapons, though it certainly earns that title. It's also as a symbol of what it means to inherit both pain and love, and how one can transform that inheritance into something new. A blade that should have been a burden became, for a time, one of Finn's greatest strengths. And that, perhaps, is its truest magic. Now, sleepy travelers, let's drift deeper into the shadows of Ooo, into a realm where power is tangled with temptation, and artifacts don't merely grant strength, but demand something in return. Tonight we arrive at one of the most infamous of all magical objects, the Nightosphere Amulet. Unlike the heroic gleam of the Enchiridion, or the cursed yet noble bond of the demon blood sword, this relic is pure darkness. It doesn't disguise what it is. It doesn't lure you with promises of honor or protection. It wears its corruption openly, humming with the voice of another world. The Nightosphere. Amulet belonged to none other than Hunson Abadir, ruler of the Nightosphere and father of Marceline the Vampire Queen. In the strange balance of Ooo, it might be the single most dangerous object we've seen because it is not just a weapon. It is a throne compressed into a jewel, a crown that doesn't sit on your head but instead around your neck. Whoever wears it doesn't just wield power, they become an extension of the Nightosphere itself. When Finn first comes into contact with the amulet, it is immediately clear that it does not play fair. The artifact feeds on the wearer, warping them, drawing out their most chaotic impulses until they no longer resemble themselves. For Finn, it was like drowning in a flood of energy he could not control, his body twisting and expanding into a monstrous shape. It wasn't a heroic transformation like when he first wielded the grass sword or learned to channel the demon blood sword's fire. This was a loss of identity, a smothering of self beneath the weight of something vast, old, and cruel. What makes the Nightosphere Amulet so chilling is that its corruptive pull is not framed as evil for evil's sake. Instead, it reveals something uncomfortable. The hunger for power is a part of anyone who wears it. In Finn's case, we see how easily even a pure-hearted hero can be pushed to the brink. The amulet doesn't whisper lies, it simply magnifies what's already inside. That is why Hunson Abadir wore it with such ease. To him, cruelty was not a distortion. It was natural. The amulet fit him like a second skin. But for Marceline, the relationship is different. The amulet represents everything she resents about her father and the world he rules. To her, it is a shackle disguised as an inheritance. Hunson may see it as a birthright, a source of authority and control, but Marceline sees only chains. She wants nothing to do with the weight it carries because she has already seen how it hollowed her father into a tyrant. That tension between power as inheritance and power as poison makes the amulet one of the most symbolically heavy artifacts in the show. It also speaks to the nature of artifacts in Ooo more broadly. Some are created to protect, like the Gauntlet of the hero. Others are born of accidents or curses, like the grass sword. But the Nightosphere Amulet feels alive in a way that most others don't. It doesn't simply react to its bearer. It actively pulls, twists, and reshapes. It has an agenda, and that agenda is tied to the very fabric of the Nightosphere. When you put it on, you are not just holding power. You are holding an open door. Visually, the amulet is small, almost unimpressive at first glance, which makes it even more unsettling. It is proof that in Ooo, appearances mean nothing when it comes to magic. Something tiny enough to slip into a pocket can carry entire worlds within it. And in the amulet's case, that world is chaos. Thematically, the Nightosphere Amulet mirrors countless stories across myth and folklore of cursed jewelry or talismans that bind their wearer. From Norse myths of rings that brought ruin to their owners, to stories of crowns that drove kings mad with ambition, the amulet feels like Adventure Time's contribution to that lineage. It represents not just dark magic, but the idea that power itself, unchecked, is corrosive. And yet there is something undeniably captivating about it. Perhaps it's the way it ties directly into Marceline's arc, becoming less of a random, cursed trinket, and more of a family heirloom she refuses to claim. Perhaps it's how the show uses it to demonstrate that even Finn, our bright and boundless hero, has shadows within him that can be drawn out. Or maybe it's simply the reminder that the greatest dangers often come from the smallest objects, the ones that rest so close to the heart. If we think about the Nightosphere Amulet as more than just a plot device, it becomes almost like a mirror held up to Ooo itself. The Land of Ooo is a patchwork of old worlds, stitched together after the Great Mushroom War. It's a place where broken relics of the past are reused, reshaped, and often misunderstood. The amulet fits perfectly into that patchwork, reminding us that every piece of magic carries history, and every history carries scars. Hunson didn't invent the amulet. He inherited it, just as Marceline could have inherited it after him. But inheritance, as we've seen again and again, is never neutral. The objects passed down to us are heavy with meaning, shaped by the lives of those who held them before. And that weight doesn't vanish when a new hand takes hold. It lingers. With the amulet, that lingering becomes overwhelming. Even when Marceline refuses it, the rejection itself becomes part of her story, part of how she defines herself apart from her father. The amulet never touches her neck, but its shadow lies across her life. There's also an interesting contrast here with the other dark relics scattered across Adventure Time. Think about the crystal gem apple, the cursed object that once transformed tree trunks into a terrifying monster, or the lamps of infinite wishes, glittering with the promise of unlimited power but always trickling into danger. These items don't have the same depth as the Nightosphere Amulet, but they still highlight a truth about Ooo. Dark relics are never just tools, they are temptations. They pull at desires we might not even realize we have. In a way, the Nightosphere Amulet is the pinnacle of that idea. It doesn't just tempt, it transforms. And unlike something like the grass sword, which fuses slowly and grows over time, the amulet is immediate. The moment it touches skin, the change begins. It's abrupt, violent, and undeniable. The suddenness is part of what makes it so terrifying, especially for Finn, who is usually in control of his choices. To watch him stripped of that control reminds us that even heroes are vulnerable to forces bigger than themselves. What's equally fascinating is that the amulet isn't framed as a necessary evil. The show makes clear that no one truly needs it. It is not destiny, not fate, not the key to some locked-away future. It's simply there, waiting. This separates it from artifacts like the Enchiridion, which was created with intention and purpose. The amulet doesn't promise meaning. It offers only raw, chaotic energy. And that, perhaps, is why it feels so alien compared to other relics in the series. If we step back for a moment, it's almost poetic how Adventure Time treats these objects of darkness. They are not defeated in the traditional sense. Finn doesn't smash the amulet, nor does Marceline destroy it to prove her independence. Instead, the dark relics of Ooo are often left lingering, unresolved, tucked away somewhere just off-screen. This suggests something important. You cannot erase darkness entirely. You can only choose how much of it you let into your life. For Marceline, the choice was clear distance. For Finn, the lesson was more painful resist, but also understand. This theme carries through to other relics, too. Peppermint Butler's strange collection of dark trinkets hints at just how many of these objects lie beneath the surface of Ooo, quietly waiting. Some are small curiosities, others ticking time bombs, but all of them contribute to that uneasy sense that Ooo is more than candy kingdoms and grassy hills. It is a land still haunted by forgotten powers, some of which were never meant to be touched by mortal hands. The Nightosphere. Amulet, then, becomes almost a symbol for every dark relic in the show. It is their ultimate expression. Seductive, overpowering, and deeply personal in its effects. It ties its wearer to something beyond themselves, reminding us that no matter how free we feel, we are always brushing against forces older and greater than we can comprehend. And yet, for all its terror, the amulet also gives us some of the most memorable images in Adventure Time. Finn's monstrous transformation under its influence, Marceline's refusal to inherit it, and Hunson's casual ease in wielding it. All of these moments remind us that artifacts are not just background lore. They are story engines, pushing characters to confront who they are and what they fear becoming. As we wander further into the shadows of Oo's lore, the Nightosphere Amulet begins to feel less like a singular relic and more like the centerpiece of a wider gallery of dark artifacts. It opens the door literally and metaphorically to consider the objects in Adventure Time that whisper rather than shine, that promise shortcuts rather than lessons, and that often lead their users astray. One such artifact is the crystal gem apple, a glittering fruit that looked harmless at first glance but carried a curse with every bite. When Tree Trunks tasted it, she transformed into something far from her cheerful apple pie self. It's a tiny story compared to the vast scope of the Nightosphere, yet it's important because it shows how darkness in Ooo doesn't always announce itself with flames or chaos. Sometimes it arrives in the sweetest form, hidden inside something meant to be harmless. The cursed apple reminds us that temptation often comes wrapped in beauty, and that appearances in this magical world can never be trusted. Another example lies with the lamps of infinite wishes, objects that seem at first like the ultimate prize. After all, who wouldn't want a lamp that bends reality to their command? But like so many wish-granting items in folklore, the lamps are never straightforward. Their promises lead to twisted outcomes, forcing those who touch them to grapple with the consequences of unchecked desire. Much like the Nightosphere Amulet, the lamps aren't about what they give, but about what they reveal. They shine a light on the heart of the person holding them, showing the cracks and selfish longings that might otherwise stay buried. Peppermint Butler, the Candy Kingdom's polite but unsettling dark wizard, is perhaps the greatest curator of these types of artifacts. His collection, glimpsed in bits and pieces across the show, is full of strange and unsettling objects, each one carrying a story we never get to fully hear. In many ways, Peppermint Butler's quiet fascination with dark relics mirrors the audience's own curiosity. We want to know what these objects do, what powers they hide, and what dangers they might unleash. But the show rarely gives us clear answers. Instead, it lets these artifacts hover at the edges of the narrative, like half-remembered myths. This technique is part of Adventure Time's charm. Instead of spelling everything out, the writers allow the relics to live in the space between seen and unseen, explained and unexplained. The Nightosphere Amulet is the exception only because of its direct tie to Marceline and Finn. Most dark relics are kept deliberately vague, as if they belong more to the texture of the world than to anyone's storyline. They make Ooo feel alive, as though beneath every rock or inside every ruined temple, there might be another piece of forbidden magic waiting to be discovered. It's also worth noting how many of these relics echo real-world mythologies. The lamps of infinite wishes recall the genie lamps of Middle Eastern folklore, objects that offered power at the cost of freedom, often binding both the wielder and the being trapped inside. The crystal gem apple connects to countless myths of cursed or forbidden fruit, from Greek tales of golden apples sparking divine feuds, to the biblical apple that reshaped the fate of humanity. And the Nightosphere Amulet itself, with its dark inheritance, mirrors the way crowns, rings, or scepters in many cultures are seen as both blessings and curses, offering authority but demanding the soul in exchange. What ties all of these together is the idea that power, when it comes easily, always has a hidden price. The Enchiridion asked for worthiness. The Gauntlet of the hero required physical might and a pure heart. Even the demon bloodsword, dark as it was, stood by Finn as a protector. But these darker relics, especially the amulet, require nothing but surrender. To wear them is to lose control, to let yourself be reshaped by forces outside your will, and that in its own way, is far more terrifying than any monster Finn ever faced. For Finn, who thrives on choice and freedom, that surrender is unbearable. Watching him buckle under the amulet's influence drives home just how precious autonomy is in the world of Ooo. For Marceline, the choice to refuse the amulet is a declaration of her independence from her father's shadow. She proves that darkness doesn't have to define you, even when it's handed down like an heirloom. For Hunson, the amulet is simply an extension of himself, a symbol of a life spent ruling through fear. These three perspectives, the hero resisting, the daughter rejecting, the tyrant embracing, give the Nightosphere Amulet its power as a story device. It is the same object, yet it tells three different tales depending on who wears it. And perhaps that is the most haunting thing about it. Unlike a sword or a shield, which act the same in any hand, the amulet seems to rewrite itself according to the wearer's heart. It doesn't just change you, you change it. Finn's monstrosity, Marceline's revulsion, Hunson's dominance, all are different reflections of the same stone. It becomes not only a relic of darkness, but also a mirror of identity. The Nightosphere. Amulet may be the crown jewel of Oo's dark relics, but it's far from the only one that casts a long shadow. To appreciate it fully, we have to see it in the larger tapestry of Oo's cursed treasures objects that, unlike the Enchiridion or the Gauntlet of the hero, don't inspire or guide so much as they test, corrupt, or ensnare. These are not gifts to their wielders. They are burdens disguised as prizes. Think, for instance, of the cursed crown worn by Ice King. While not always framed as a relic in the same sense as the amulet, it is arguably the most consequential dark artifact of all. The crown doesn't whisper, it shouts. It consumes its wearer with visions, reshapes their very mind, and transforms their body into something unrecognizable. Much like the amulet, it is small, delicate even, yet it holds within it the weight of an entire kingdom of pain. What makes the crown so tragic is that, unlike the amulet, which can be removed, the crown becomes a permanent part of its host. In Simon's case, it is not just a curse. It is a life sentence. Then there are stranger curiosities, like the amulet of the ancient sleeping magi of life-giving. At first, it seems almost silly, a quirky trinket that animates objects into clumsy, bumbling beings. But even this odd little relic hints at something darker. Life-giving magic may seem harmless, but in Ooo, the line between playful enchantment and unnatural disturbance is razor-thin. A rock that suddenly walks, or a chair that suddenly talks, may feel whimsical, but beneath that whimsy lies the question of whether those creations ask to exist at all. It is a reminder that even the smallest relics can stir unsettling truths about creation and control. All of these objects together paint a consistent picture. Dark relics in Ooo are never neutral. They are never simply there to make a hero's journey easier. Instead, they confront the wielder with choice, responsibility, and often temptation. The Enchiridion might reward the worthy, but the amulet punishes the careless. The crown demands sacrifice. The lamps trick their holders. Even the humble gem apple warns of beauty hiding danger. What makes them so effective as storytelling tools is that they are not just obstacles. They are reflections. Each dark relic forces a character to look inward, to see their own hunger, weakness, or fear staring back at them. For Finn, the Nightosphere Amulet exposed how thin the line was between bravery and recklessness. For Marceline, it showed how deeply she feared becoming her father. For Simon, the crown made clear that even the noblest sacrifice could twist into something monstrous if bound to the wrong kind of magic. These relics remind us that in Ooo, the real battles are often not with armies or monsters, but with the self. And there is one final element worth noting. These relics endure. They rarely vanish from the world. They are not defeated in the same way villains are. The crown remains. The amulet lingers. The cursed trinkets collected by Peppermint Butler still sit, waiting somewhere in the Candy Kingdom's hidden vaults. This endurance is what makes them feel so mythic. They are not events, they are forces. They can be put aside, but they can never truly be destroyed. In this way, they echo real myths, where cursed objects often resurface across generations, bringing trouble to each new hand that touches them. For the bedtime traveler wandering through Oo's lore, the Nightosphere Amulet is not just a story of one battle or one transformation. It is a reminder that darkness always waits, patient and persistent, ready to be claimed or rejected. It teaches us that power is not something you own, it's something that owns you, if you let it. And in the quiet glow of Oo's strange nights, that lesson lingers more strongly than any heroic triumph. So when we think of the amulet or the crown, or any of these shadow relics, we are really thinking about the same question. How do we face the parts of ourselves that long for power, control, or escape? The relics externalize those desires and make them visible and tangible. But the truth they reveal is one that exists even without them. They are mirrors dressed as jewels, reflections disguised as weapons. And that is why they stay with us. Not because of their magic, not because of their destructive potential, but because they speak to something timeless. The Nightosphere Amulet and its dark kin remind us that temptation is always near, the choice is always present, and that even in a land as whimsical as Ooo, the deepest struggles are the ones carried quietly in the heart. Every land has its treasures, but Ooo is unlike anywhere else. Here, relics do not simply sit behind glass cases or rest quietly in tombs. They whisper from the corners of abandoned dungeons, lie buried beneath roots and ruins, or sleep in the pockets of unlikely creatures who don't always understand the power they carry. Some relics are famous, like the Enchiridion or the Nightosphere Amulet, but others are more elusive. These are the hidden and forgotten artifacts of Ooo, the ones we glimpse only in fragments, whose stories are hinted at but never fully told. What makes these relics so enchanting is precisely that we do not have the full picture. They live in mystery. A rusted blade, a glowing gem, a half-broken device left over from the Mushroom War, all of these could be relics in their own right, carrying histories that stretch far beyond the moment we see them. Adventure Time thrives on this ambiguity, letting the imagination fill the gaps. By showing us relics in passing, it makes the world feel lived in, as though Ooo is built upon centuries of forgotten adventures. Take the ancient psychic tandem war elephant, for instance. Though not a relic in the traditional sense, it is bound by the same aura of myth. This massive, cosmic being slumbers away, its existence so strange and powerful that it feels like it must have been forged or bound by some long-lost artifact. Its very presence implies that hidden relics of unimaginable scale exist in Ooo things too powerful to be catalogued or contained. The elephant represents not just raw force, but the lingering question of who once commanded such beings and what other forgotten powers may still be out there. Then there are the smaller, quieter relics, like the keys and trinkets scattered across ancient dungeons. These items rarely receive names or backstories, but each one tells a tale through its design. A key shaped like a dragon suggests a kingdom once ruled by reptilian lords. A gem inscribed with arcane runes hints at wizards whose words outlived their bodies. Even the battered shields and helmets Finn and Jake sometimes stumble across feel like echoes of a time when battles raged long before they were born. These are artifacts that do not need explanation. Their silence is part of their charm. They remind us that not every story is told, and not every relic needs a wielder to be important. One of the most haunting examples of a forgotten relic is the ruins left behind from the Mushroom War itself. Scattered across Ooo are strange pieces of technology, broken satellites, rusted robots, crumbling laboratories that blur the line between science and magic. For the people of Ooo, these relics are mysteries, often mistaken for magical objects because their original purpose has been lost. A glowing console might seem like an enchanted altar. A shard of glass might be revered as a crystal of power. This reinterpretation of the past adds another layer to the mythology of Ooo. The relics are not just magical in essence. They become magical because of how they are remembered. And that is perhaps the most fascinating thing about forgotten relics. They live not only in the physical world, but also in the stories people tell about them. A sword in the ground may simply be a sword, but to a villager, it might be the blade of a hero who once saved their ancestors. A glowing rock may be nothing more than radioactive waste, but to a wizard, it is a source of untapped arcane energy. In this way, relics of Ooo are shaped as much by memory and myth as by material. Their power grows with each retelling, even when the truth of their origin has been lost to time. In these hidden artifacts, we see the quiet backbone of Oo's history. The great treasures, like the Enchiridion, shine brightly, but it is the forgotten relics that give the land its depth, its sense of layers upon layers of lives lived before. They are the background music of the world, subtle but essential, reminding us that Ooo is not just a stage for Finn and Jake, but a place with roots that stretch endlessly downward into forgotten ages. Among the more curious relics of Ooo are those that seem to shift meaning depending on who discovers them. Consider the Demon Blood Sword, a weapon born of both family legacy and supernatural essence. To Finn, it was a tool of courage and adventure. To his father, Martin, it was simply a trinket, one more item in a world full of things to be taken and discarded. Yet the sword itself carried a quiet will, a reminder of the bloodline Finn was tied to. Even after it was destroyed, its presence lingered in memory, as though it remained part of Finn's destiny. The Demon Blood Sword is a relic that speaks to how objects can embody not just power but heritage, making them more than just weapons. In a similar way, the root sword Finn's very first sword was not powerful compared to later weapons, but it was deeply symbolic. Its crooked handle and fragile blade were relics of his earliest steps into heroism. For most, it would have been little more than junk found in a treasure chest. But because Finn wielded it with conviction, it became part of his story, a personal relic that mattered not because of what it could do, but because of what it represented. In Ooo, even the humblest of objects can carry the weight of legend when attached to the right moment or memory. And then there are relics we see only in the faintest glimpses. One example is the mystical jewels that appear in episodes like Wizard Battle, objects that seem ancient and coveted, but never explained. They shine brightly for a moment, then fade into obscurity, leaving us to wonder, who forged these gems? What spells are hidden inside them? Why were they abandoned? These unanswered questions give them a haunting quality, like relics pulled from a dream rather than a concrete history. The vaults and temples scattered across Ooo also suggest countless relics we never fully uncover. When Finn and Jake explore old ruins, the walls are often lined with symbols, statues, and carvings that hint at forgotten civilizations. In Dungeon, we see enchanted items like the Crystal Eye or the Gauntlet of the Demon Cat, each strange and brimming with potential, yet never fully expanded upon. These items are one-scene wonders, but they enrich the world because they suggest depth beyond what we see. It is as though Ooo itself is a museum, and we are allowed to peek into only a few display cases, while endless halls remain sealed. Another fascinating relic is the crown of the Ice King. Of course, we know its story well, the magical artifact that transformed Simon Petrikov into a mad king. But what makes the crown compelling in the context of forgotten relics is its origin. It is older than the Mushroom War. It predates Simon. It is a creation of Urgent's evergreen, meant to stop a comet of destruction. In this way, the crown is both famous and forgotten. Famous in that we know it as the Ice King symbol, but forgotten in that its true purpose, its ancient role in protecting the world, has been buried under centuries of misuse and tragedy. This duality is what gives relics their power. They are never just one story, but many layered atop each other. Beyond magical weapons and crowns, there are stranger relics still. Artifacts like the universal source, hinted at in the deeper lore, or the hidden items scattered across the Nightosphere, suggest that entire dimensions have their own relics. These items don't belong to one world or one people. They belong to the cosmos. In Adventure Time, relics serve as bridges, connecting not just past to present, but world to world. Each one is a doorway to something larger, whether or not the characters ever open it. Even everyday objects in Ooo can take on the weight of forgotten relics. Look at the way BMO treasures an old cassette tape, or how Marceline holds on to her worn-out bass guitar, once her mother's family heirloom. These are personal relics, not world-altering in their power, but profound in their meaning. They prove that relics do not always have to glow with magic or hum with danger. Sometimes they simply carry memory, the quiet magic of love, family, and time passing. Relics in Ooo remind us of something essential, that history is not a straight line, but a collection of fragments scattered across the land like broken glass. Some pieces shine brightly, others remain buried in shadow, but together they create a mosaic of stories that stretch back to the dawn of time. Each forgotten object is a reminder that even in a land of heroes and villains, it is the small hidden details that give Ooo its soul. Some of the most intriguing relics are those tied not to the familiar kingdoms of Ooo, but to the far reaches of existence, the cosmic and multiversal plane. These are the kinds of artifacts that appear briefly, almost as if the show itself only wanted to give us a passing whisper, a suggestion that there are worlds beyond what Finn and Jake could ever touch. Take the Enchiridion, for example. We already explored it in detail earlier, but what is less often mentioned is that the book itself is not simply a heroic guide. In time, it became a multiversal key, literally reshaped by Hunson Abadir and others into a tool capable of opening rifts to higher dimensions. This transformation teaches us something vital. Relics are not fixed. They evolve as new hands claim them. A guide for heroes in one age can become a key to cosmic destruction in another. That is the strange life of relics in Ooo. They are alive in the sense that their stories shift depending on who wields them. Another relic that hints at something larger is the Citadel Crystal Shard, once used to summon the Guardian that imprisoned cosmic criminals. Finn's father, Martin, escapes the Citadel with the help of such a shard, showing us that even the smallest fragments of great relics carry tremendous power. To the casual viewer, it's a glowing stone, but to those who think about its origin, it is the shattered piece of a prison, older than entire civilizations, created to contain beings who could reshape galaxies. Imagine how many other fragments of such ancient structures might still be scattered in the seas of Ooo, or buried in its deserts, waiting to be found. We also see relics associated with entities like Orgolor, the primordial terror who once sought to consume worlds. Its ship, hidden beneath Ooo's ice, is itself a relic of alien origin. It slumbered there for untold ages, forgotten even by its master until the time was right. In this sense, relics are not always small objects that can be held. They can be entire vessels, temples, or structures that stand silent until the day they awaken again. And when they do, they remind us that Ooo is not an isolated place, but part of a much grander cosmic cycle. Then there are the spell books, scattered across wizard libraries and guarded by powerful beings like Ash or even Peppermint Butler. These are relics of a quieter kind, not forged from steel or stone, but from ink and knowledge. Books of ancient spells, some dating back to the earliest wizards, are relics that don't just hold magic. They hold the memory of how that magic was once used. A spell written 1,000 years ago still breathes when spoken aloud. And if those books are destroyed or forgotten, entire traditions of magic might vanish with them. That is the subtle but devastating power of relics. They carry forward not just abilities, but identities. The world of Ooo also teases relics tied to elemental magic. During the Elementals arc, we see hints that ancient relics were once used to balance or channel the primal forces of ice, fire, candy, and slime. While few of these artifacts are shown directly, their existence is suggested in the way Princess Bubblegum references forgotten science and ancient magic. Imagine a crystalline vessel capable of containing the raw power of the Fire Kingdom, or an amulet that could call forth the Slime Kingdom's tidal floods. We may not see these items outright, but their echoes are felt in the structure of Oo's kingdoms themselves. And then there is the Time Room, Prismo's realm, which might itself be thought of as a kind of living relic. It is not an object in the traditional sense, but it functions as a pocket dimension bound to a single cosmic being. When Finn and Jake interact with Prismo's Time Room, they are in contact with something far older and stranger than any sword or amulet. In that sense, even entire realms in Adventure Time can be considered relics, existing outside of normal history but shaping it all the same. Hidden relics also appear in small, nearly overlooked moments. In one episode, we see the amulet of the witch's garden, worn by the old witch who cursed Finn's arm. It doesn't seem important at first, just a trinket on a character's neck. But if you pause to consider, it is an item imbued with the kind of curse magic strong enough to alter a hero's destiny. It raises the question, how many minor characters in Ooo are carrying relics of enormous importance, artifacts that never get a spotlight, but nevertheless hum quietly in the background, shaping the lives of those who own them? What makes these relics unforgettable is the mystery surrounding them. They are not explained in exposition, not carefully cataloged or outlined. They simply appear. Like stones poking out of the earth after centuries of rain, their stories half buried, waiting for someone curious enough to dig deeper. This design choice in Adventure Time mirrors the way real myths work. Every culture has stories of lost swords, forgotten crowns, books of forbidden knowledge, or jewels that once ruled empires. By leaving so much unsaid, the show allows us to imagine that Ooo, too, has its own buried myths, older than even the Mushroom War. When you step back and look at them all together, a pattern begins to form. Each relic, whether it's a book, a blade, a crown, or a ship, represents both power and history. Some are tied to cosmic entities, some to elemental magic, and some simply to the personal journeys of Finn, Jake, or Marceline. But all of them serve the same purpose. They connect the living characters of Ooo to the ghosts of the past and the mysteries of the future. Relics are the threads that bind Oo's tapestry, keeping it from unraveling into chaos. Among the most fascinating of Oo's forgotten relics are those that blur the line between the mundane and the magical. These are the objects that don't announce themselves with glowing runes or booming powers, but instead hum with quiet significance. Take Marceline's bass guitar, for example. On the surface, it's just a musical instrument, a reworked battle axe turned into something more personal. But when she plays it, the relic becomes something greater. It carries the echoes of her centuries-long life, the memories of her mother, and the bond she'd once shared with Simon. Its strings don't just make music, they tell her story, vibrating with the ache of love, loss, and survival. It might not be a weapon like the grass sword, but it has shaped Ooo in its own way, through the emotional power of sound. BMO, too, treasures personal relics. The little console collects odd trinkets, old tapes, buttons, and scraps that others might see as junk. Yet in BMO's hands, they become relics of identity. They help BMO remember who they are and remind them of the joy of play and imagination. These keepsakes reveal that a relic doesn't need to topple kingdoms to matter. Sometimes its magic lies in how it makes someone feel less alone. Even Finn himself carries soft relics. The little mementos he keeps in his treehouse, like trophies from adventures or tokens from friends, serve as touchstones of his journey. Each item may seem unimportant when viewed in isolation, but together they chart his growth from boy to hero. They show us that relics don't always come from gods, demons, or cosmic beings. Sometimes they are forged through friendship, laughter, and time. And then there are relics so obscure that they almost vanish into the corners of Oo's history. Think of the cursed glasses of Choo's goose, or the potion bottles lying forgotten in a wizard's cellar. We catch only glimpses of them, but they remind us of how wide and strange Ooo truly is. For every relic we know, there are likely dozens more that have been lost, buried, or broken. The landscape itself feels alive with hidden treasures, enchanted coins at the bottom of rivers, shattered staves beneath the roots of trees, or charms buried under Candy Kingdom cobblestones. Each one could be rediscovered one day, sparking a new story. There's also the sense that some relics are waiting for the right person to claim them. Many of the artifacts we've explored, the Enchiridion, the grass sword, the demon blood sword, the Nightosphere Amulet, all found their way into the hands of those who needed the most, even if they didn't understand it at first. Perhaps Ooo itself has a will, guiding these relics toward those destined to wield them. Perhaps every object is waiting for its moment to shine, when its hidden magic will change a life. What makes the relics of Ooo so compelling is that they reflect both the vastness of myth and the intimacy of personal memory. They are both legendary and ordinary, both cosmic and humble. They can open portals to new dimensions or simply remind someone of the family they once loved. In this way, relics mirror life itself. We all carry our own relics, objects that mean nothing to the world but everything to us. A photograph, a letter, a gift from a friend. These are the quiet relics of our own stories, just as powerful in their meaning as any crown or sword in Adventure Time. And so, as we bring our journey to a close tonight, let's remember that Oo's relics are more than magical tools. They are vessels of memory, threads of history, and sparks of possibility. They remind us that every corner of the world, no matter how small, hides a story awaiting to be uncovered. Some relics lie in plain sight. Others slumber beneath dust and shadow, but all of them whisper the same truth, that the past is never truly gone, and the future is always being shaped by the treasures we carry with us. So, sleepyheads, as you settle deeper into your blankets, let the thought of these forgotten and hidden relics drift through your dreams. Imagine the strange objects lying buried in the fields of Ooo, or the shimmering tools locked away in cosmic vaults, each waiting for the right soul to awaken them. Perhaps one day, someone like you will stumble upon them, and their story will begin again. For now, let the magic of Oo's relics carry you gently into the night. May your dreams be filled with enchanted swords, ancient books, glowing amulets, and keepsakes of love. Until next time, rest well, dream deeply, and good night.